Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's GPE webinar. My name is Michelle Messon, and I am Senior Partnership Specialist with the Partnership and Change Management team here at the GPE Secretariat. We are based here at the Global Partnership for Education headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I'm joined today by several colleagues, including from the GPE webinar team. The GPE webinar series began in 2016 as part of GPE's Knowledge and Good Practice Exchange Initiative, which came about in response to requests from GPE partner countries for opportunities to exchange global knowledge, good practice, and policy approaches in an effort to help inform in which practitioners and partner countries can engage in an interactive dialogue and showcases the innovative work being done across the partnership to deliver better education results for every child as we work tirelessly to fulfill our shared vision for SDG 4. Before I turn it over to our presenter today, I would like to direct your attention to just a few quick housekeeping issues. If you're experiencing any connection issues, please let us know via email at webinars@globalpartnership.org, or you can also input into the chat function in the YouTube Live directly. We will have an online Q&A session after the presentation, so please do send your comments and questions throughout the webinar via YouTube's live chat function and/or via email, again at webinars@globalpartnership.org. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded, so following this session, we will share resources, as we often do, associated with this webinar, including a link to a recorded session along with a blog post and summary note. Today's session will focus on the recently published GPE Results Report 2018. The report is based on partnership-wide results framework embedded in GPE 20, our 2016 to 2020 strategic plan. It outlines our partnership's achievements and lays out areas in which we need to improve with respect to the milestones in the results framework. The report also serves as a key tool in holding ourselves mutually accountable for achieving the partnership's common goals. In this session, findings and conclusions of the results report and how GPE is achieving results and addressing critical challenges will be discussed. I'm now very pleased to introduce you to Nidhi Khattri, who works at the Global Partnership for Education, where she leads the Results Evaluation and Learning team. She's responsible for producing GPE's results report and managing its evaluation portfolio, currently comprising 30-plus evaluation studies. Prior to joining GPE, she was lead evaluation officer in the Human Development and Corporate Evaluations Unit of the Independent Evaluation Group at the World Bank, where most recently she co-led the results and performance of the World Bank Group 2016, IEG's annual flagship publication. So without further ado, please, Nidhi, I'd like you to take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss the 2018 GPE Results Report. As Michelle has already mentioned, the report charts progress against the 2017 milestones in the GPE Results Framework. This is the second results report under the GPE 2020 strategy. So in this presentation, I will discuss key findings and also note areas for improvement. So first, let me say a few words about GPE's theory of change. Because the results report traces GPE results along its theory of change. The theory of change articulates the goals GPE aims to achieve and the way in which it will achieve them. GPE has two main goals: improved learning outcomes and increased equity, both student-level goals. In order to achieve these, GPE aims to strengthen education systems and help them become more effective and efficient. That's the second level of the theory of change. At the country level, that's the third level, this outcome, the outcome of strengthened education systems, is enabled through three objectives, which lock together quality sector plan and implementation with mutual accountability and financing. At the next level down, GPE works at the global level with two objectives: to mobilize financing and to build a strong partnerships, both of which provide a strong foundation for the work at the country level. GPE's results at all of these levels are measured through a results framework that has 37 indicators with periodic milestones. The 2018 results report discusses the 28 milestones set for 2017. So let's start with a numeric overview of the results before turning to more specific results. GPE met 22 out of 28 milestones set for 2017. As we just discussed, the results framework reflects the four levels of GPE's theory of change. The impact level captures results at the student level. Students are the ultimate beneficiaries of GPE's work. The outcome level measures system-level improvements. With a strong education system, we expect better results for students. In this report, the data for most 7 out of 10 indicators at these two levels, impact and outcome, are from 2015. This is important to note. These data are extremely useful for monitoring progress and diagnosing where GPE's efforts should be directed. They do not yet reflect the contributions of the work being done under GPE 2020. The next two levels, country level objectives and global level objectives, are about the partnership's current work. The data at these levels demonstrate what intermediate results are being achieved under GPE 2020. So first, now let's turn to the first goal, which did not have any milestones in 2017. There are two indicators under this goal. One is to have improved learning. That's the proportion of developing country partners with improved learning outcomes. And then the second indicator is the percentage of children under 5 that are developmentally on track. When we look at data availability with respect to learning, we see that by the end of GPE 2020, data will become available for 26 countries to measure improvement in learning. This tells us that learning data are still an issue, and it's something that GPE is continuing to work on. Survey data on early childhood development will be available for only 11 countries. So both of these topics, learning and data on learning, will be discussed more thoroughly in the 2019 results report. But this is just to note that while data are improving, this is one of the key areas of concern to GPE. Now, on the second goal, on equity, gender equality, and inclusion, the partnership met all or partially met all 7 milestones. GPE has cumulatively supported 18.5 million children, exceeding the milestone of 17.3 million. 48% among these children were girls. We see a slow but steady progress on the secondary completion rates between 2011 and 2015. We also see progress on primary completion rate. In addition, we see improvements in pre-primary enrollment rates also between 2011 and 2015. primary out-of-school children rate also decreased consistently between 2010 and 2015. But we have important challenges. The out-of-school rate is still high. It was 19% in 2015. And the primary number of primary level out-of-school children has not decreased due to increase in the primary age population. The number of children in GPE countries is 43 million for out-of-school children, and the majority of them live in countries affected by fragility and conflict. Gender parity has improved at the lower secondary level, but stagnated at the primary level between 2005 and 2015. As you can see, girls are more likely, 1.3 times more likely, to be out of school than are boys at the primary level. And this disparity has not decreased since 2005. The third GPE goal is to strengthen education systems, and in 2017, we measured 3 system-level indicators. The first is on domestic financing, the second is on pupil-to-trained-teacher ratios, and the third is on countries reporting key education indicators to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. The positive news is that the developing country partners showed strong results on domestic financing. Domestic financing is a key foundation of an effective education system. This indicator captures data under GPE 2020 strategy. 79% of DCPs with available data either increase their public expenditure on education or maintain sector spending at 20% or above in 2016. This is similar to the data we see in 2015. At the same time, 9 countries with data did not meet these criteria, and 3 of them were countries affected by fragility and conflict. At the same time, the percentage of DCPs, developing country partners, meeting the pupil-to-trained-teacher ratio of 40:1 stagnated between 2010 and 2015. If we consider only those countries with data for all 5 years, that's the dotted line, we see a similar trend. At the same time, the good news is that this ratio has gone from very high to less high in 7 DCPs, even though they are above the 40:1 threshold. You can see that to the right of the chart. Now let's look at the data reporting to UNESCO Institutes for Statistics. We see a sharp decline in the percentage of countries reporting data to UIS between 2014 and 2015. This is partially due to a steep drop-off in the reporting of financing indicators. Reporting on service delivery indicators has remained low. That's the line at the bottom. The reasons for this drop-off are varied, including fewer UIS regional workshops that support the DCPs in reporting these data. Reporting data to UIS is important as it exhibits DCP's efforts in monitoring the education system and sharing this information globally in a transparent way. So far, we have discussed impact and system level data, mostly from 2015. Now we turn to country level objectives, planning and mutual accountability. This is where we can see the effects of the collective efforts of the partnership under the GPE 2020 plan. No milestone is set for the quality of education sector plans for 2018. That's under the first country objective. But data showed that over 90% of the sector plans met overall quality standards in 2016-2017, significantly higher than at baseline in 2014-2015. This is very good news, as a strong quality education sector plan is the blueprint for what needs to happen to achieve student learning. However, there's no room for complacency. Under overall quality, the achievability of sector plans needs to improve, as do teaching and learning strategies. Now let's take a look at the second part of country-level objectives, mutual accountability, which showed mixed performance. The composition of local education groups improved from baseline, with 53% of all local education groups, including civil society and teacher organizations. That exceeded the milestone. This is a positive step in ensuring that all key stakeholders are engaged. However, the quality of joint sector reviews did not meet the milestone. That's the figure to the right. A majority of the reviews were not participatory, evidence-based, and they were not used as instruments for change. So the process of mutual accountability needs to improve, even though participation is moving in the right direction. The third country-level objective is regarding effective and efficient partnership, and the indicators under this objective track GPE grant performance. On grant financing, the partnership tracks 3 indicators: plan versus achieve for textbook distribution, teacher training, and the building of classrooms. All indicators exceeded milestones, reflecting efficient grant implementation. Finally, data on global level objectives dealing with better financing and a strong partnership showed that the partnership is strong in most areas and GPE met 9 out of 11 milestones. GPE raised $10.5 million from non-traditional donors, and all donors met their pledges to GPE and provided funding for education. The partnership is an increasingly important source of education for overseas development aid. Between 2004 and 2016, the share of GPE financing for basic education has grown steadily in GPE countries and now constitutes 12% of ODA, overseas development aid. At the same time, alignment and harmonization of aid are a challenge. Both of these things, alignment and harmonization, are critical features of the partnership. As we can see, all grants are aligned with the education sector plans at the country level. But the non-aligned grants, that's the deep purple part of the figure on the left, tend not to use government budget, expenditure, and audit systems. To be considered to be aligned, grants must meet 7 out of 10 criteria. So in conclusion, there is good progress with respect to several aspects of GPE's work. There is steady overall progress on enrollment and completion, but out-of-school children and gender parity need urgent attention. There is excellent progress with respect to sector planning, which is a central feature of GPE's work. At the same time, mutual accountability and alignment need more in-depth attention. So the key areas for improvement really focus on 3 different areas. Learning outcomes, really to improve the data underlying learning, the measurement of learning outcomes. children out of school, especially girls and children in fragile contexts, and improving supporting effective systems, especially with respect to trained teachers and data systems that enable good decision making. So, what are GPE's improvement actions? The first set includes making the right investments to refine use of GPE's results-based financing tranche to reinforce results in equity and learning, to reinforce value for money in the area of teacher development, really to support the trained teachers and teacher allocation, and to improve GPE framework for work in fragile and conflict-afflicted states to get more children into school. The second area concerns strengthening planning and monitoring, focusing on achievability in sector plans to strengthen execution, invest more in learning assessment systems, invest in better data, especially on the hardest to reach children, get better data on those children, monitor the quality of teaching, and strengthen mutual accountability processes, which means helping strengthen the local education groups and joint sector review processes. A third bucket of improvement is really to enable all partners in the partnership to get involved at the country level and focus on these areas where LEGS, the coordinating agents, help with the achievability of plans, harmonize financing, and monitor progress in learning and equity. Grant agents and developing country partners make the right investments and ensure implementation. Civil society organizations play a strong accountability role, and the GPE Secretariat plays a supporting role through quality assurance, monitoring and reporting, technical guidance, and through the upcoming mechanism of knowledge and information exchange. So thank you. Over to Michelle.
Great. Thank you very much, Nidhi. That was very interesting. I'd like to move along to the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to please type them into the chat function in the YouTube Live, or I'll send them via email. We have a few members already online. The Pakistan Coalition for Education is asking whether there is a list of countries that are not reporting to UIS, and if so, how that list can be accessed. In addition, I'll start off to sort of kick things off with the first question. It's promising to see that the quality of GPE developing country partners' education sector plans has improved significantly in 2016 and 2017, respectively. Nevertheless, has the results report team found any evidence suggesting that improved education sector planning is associated with improved program implementation? So maybe we'll start with those.
Mm-hmm. So on the first question, list of countries not reporting to UIS, yes, this is you can access this information from UIS. This information, we receive these data from UIS because it's the countries reporting to UIS, and we simply receive this information. So this information is available through UIS. On the second question, evidence of improved sector planning, it's an excellent question. Sector plan implementation, it's a really excellent question. And this is one of the key issues that we are going to be looking at through the series of evaluations that we are implementing now. We have 30 case studies ongoing of GPE's work at the country level, and one of the issues that we are looking at is how sector plan implementation is going in these countries. Now, one thing to remember is that what we have reported on in terms of improved sector plans, these are new sector plans because these are from 2016, 2017. And so some of this work on how whether the improved quality results in improved implementation, we will learn about only in the coming years because these are new plans. But it's a very good question.
Great, thanks, Nidhi. And maybe just to clarify on the first question, if I understand correctly, then are the countries that are reporting to UIS, do they list them by country so that, because I think the question is what countries are not reporting. So by looking at this list, they could determine which countries are not there. Is that right?
Yes, so for each UIS indicator, you can access from UIS's website a list of countries that have reported and a list of countries that have not. So that is available.
Great. And maybe I'll let you introduce Rudraksh.
Yes, let me introduce Rudraksh Mitra. He's a key member of the Results and Performance team and had an important role in drafting the results report. So he's one of the key lead authors of the report.
Great, thank you, thank you. So another question is on the results report shows that GPE exceeded its targets for teachers trained through GPE funded grants in 2017, yet the milestone for pupil trained teacher ratios was missed. What are the report's findings on the underlying causes of poor performance with respect to provision of pupil-trained teachers?
Again, a very good question. And one of the reasons is that it takes, quite a lot of time to really get trained teachers out there. First, you have to train the teachers, then you have to have proper allocation of teachers, and you have to have a sufficient number of teachers. So while there's improvement in teacher training, it's not quite hitting the target in terms of the 40-to-1 ratio. Now, we do see improvements in that ratio, but it just doesn't meet the 40-to-1 threshold that we're aiming for in order to ensure that, children have the sort of attention from teachers needed to improve learning outcomes. Let me also turn to Rudraksh to answer that question.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is that our data on pupil to trained teacher ratios is lagged. So we have a 2-year lag in reporting that data. So while our grants are doing well in terms of achieving their targets on teacher training, the data on pupil to trained teacher ratios is actually data from 2015. So if indeed the grants have had an impact on improving pupil to trained teacher ratios, we should see that impact coming in the years to come.
Yeah, let me just add to that. So this is a very important point and that I mentioned earlier. The data are typically lagged in our results report, and the reason for that is that it takes countries a little bit of time to report on these data to the Unesco Institute for Statistics. The ones particularly around completion, dropout rates, teacher allocation, all of that. So it takes time for them to report to UIS and for UIS to sort of clean and put that all up and make it publicly available. So that's why we see this lag. So there's some data that we access immediately. That's at levels 3 and 4 of our theory of change. But at the top levels of the theory of change, they come in later. So that's just something really important to remember.
Thank you. We have a question coming through from colleagues online from the One campaign. The question is, in how far is achieving future milestones contingent upon the 3.1 billion replenishment target for the 2018 through 2020 period, since this amount is not secured in full yet?
So again, that's a really good question. Financing is a basic input into everything GPE does. You need the funding to be able to implement the key actions needed to achieve the goals that GPE has set for itself. So the results framework is based on 61 countries. And of course, and the pool of countries is increasing. So we will be also investing that funding into the new countries. But it is an exceedingly important source of input. So I can't say, precisely how the targets will change or whether or not we will hit the targets if we don't get that new financing. But it is an important input into continuing to work with our partner countries. And of course, if funding doesn't materialize, we are not able to do the kinds of things that we are currently doing and our partner countries are currently doing in achieving those outcomes. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
No, and let's summarize it.
Yes, it's a great question, and I think just a reminder to us all how we do work in partnership and how grateful we are at the GPE in the partnership for our CSO and coalition advocates who are working really hard to beat the drums around the need for increased financing. Another question, how useful do you think annual fluctuations in the indicator values are to track the partnership's performance, given the volatility of the data on impact indicators? Do you believe the partnership's actions have any impact in these indicators?
Mm-hmm. So another really good question. As you know, we have set targets at the outcome level, and impact levels, which deal with students, which deal with education systems as a whole. Now, these outcome and impact level indicators are subject to fluctuations, not simply because of the work that governments, CSOs, GPE Secretariat are doing, but because of other factors as well. So we will see annual fluctuations. Maybe, for example, in teacher training, maybe an insufficient number of students apply to become teachers. That's outside of the control of the partnership. And so you'll see fewer teachers trained. I'm just giving that as an example. Or kids drop out of school because there is some sort of an emergency. There is an earthquake or something, and that forces kids to be out of school. So there are a number of factors that can affect these kinds of indicators, and we're likely to see fluctuations. I think the important thing to remember is the trajectory in the right direction? That's what we need to aim for, to continue to work on issues, continue to learn, continue to see where improvements are needed, and if on the whole, over the years, we're in the right direction, I think annual fluctuations are not that important.
Thanks, Nidhi. I have a couple of questions now coming through online as well. The first question is coming from ANSEFA, our colleagues in Dakar, which is a coalition. The question is around domestic financing and resource mobilization. They note domestic financing and resource mobilization improved managing to fundraise from non-traditional donors and pledges honored. How did countries perform in honoring the replenishment pledges? Maybe a bit too early to tell on that one, but maybe I'll ask the next question as well. The next question is from the Pakistan Coalition for Education. How is GPE and UIS ensuring credibility of the data being provided by the governments? How are you ensuring that the data represents the actual work done on the ground?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on domestic financing, as Michelle mentioned, it's too early to tell, and this is something that we will be, of course, tracking through the results framework. Because, we have domestic financing indicators, and we will be tracking that. So good question, and please keep monitoring it to see how well we're doing. Let me turn to Rudraksh, if that's okay, on the credibility of the data.
Right. So on data that we receive from UIS has a set of mechanisms to quality assure the data. They rely on countries filling in questionnaires which contain all the data that UIS reports. However, once UIS does receive that questionnaire, then they go through a set of quality assurance steps to ensure that that the data is coherent and that various values reported to UIS all make sense as a whole. In GPE, we have an ongoing work stream on improving EMIS systems. So we provide sort of technical support to countries when they're designing their plans and their grants to ensure that their education management information systems are of quality and that they produce reliable data. And then the Secretariat is also undertaking technical work, most notably through International EMIS conference recently in Paris, which brought developing countries together to understand what issues they had in collecting and reporting data, and how various actors, the DCPs themselves, but also organizations like GPE, could work to support better data systems in DCPs.
Thank you. We have another question coming through from the African Union Commission in Ethiopia. They are noting that considering that DCPs cut across regional and continental boundaries and may have similarities or differ in different ways depending on this, how is GPE segmenting DCPs in order to tailor specific strategies that suit their needs and measure their progress practically?
Mm-hmm. Again, a very good question. So GPE's country-level model is really tailored to the country. As you know, the country-level model is based on sector financing, sector plan development and implementation, so that inherently is a tailored feature of GPE's work. It then combines that with mutual accountability, which is also a country-level process, because the local education group comprises actors at the local level, in addition to donors and grant agents and so forth. But local CESOs are to be included in that process, as is the government. So the local education groups and the joint sector review processes are all country-based. And then the third piece is the financing piece, which of course is based on the sector plan. And the financing then is tailored to the needs of the country. So this is all very much a country-driven model. We do have some aspects of GPE's work that deals at the cross-country level. So for example, we will have this KICS mechanism, which is the knowledge and innovation exchange. And this mechanism is still being designed, but there, of course, we hope to pull together countries for solutions that might cut across countries. So it may be that countries with similarities have something to share that might help each other, but it could equally be the case that countries that are dissimilar have something to share with each other. So it's really, what is it that we're aiming to improve, and how we do it is sort of tailored to the country, but also features cross-country work in ways that might not be sort of a standardized feature of GPE's work. Having said that, we will be focusing, as I noted earlier, on fragility and conflict, and looking to see specifically, what are some of the problems. There are certain problems that cut across fragility contexts and fragility and conflict-afflicted state context. So it's a good question, but I think that there isn't one answer to that, essentially. Thanks, Nidhi. Do you want to add something?
No, just sort of building on what Nidhi said. So the one, when we look at the alignment of GPE's financing to country-level processes, the one area where GPE financing is very well aligned is in terms of alignment to education sector plans. And these education sector plans are developed in country, and they're wholly country-owned. So GPE financing supports countries in their ambitions as they're laid out in the education sector plans. and the goals and targets that a country sets for itself are not dictated by the Secretariat or at the partnership level, but are country-owned and country-led.
Thank you. We have another question. When can we expect to see findings from GPE's portfolio of country-level evaluations? Have the evaluations yielded any early insights which could potentially help us interpret the findings of the results report?
Mm-hmm. So the portfolio of evaluations has just gotten going. We started the evaluations in January this year. And the first set of case studies, we will have 7 of those. Those are upcoming. They're going to be finalized soon, and they will be actually up on our website. So we invite you to look at them yourself and see how the GPE mechanism has been working in these countries. So I think one of the key findings is that the GPE processes have helped. Now these are draft findings, so we will be getting the final reports. But one of the key things is that the sector plans have to be solid and they have to be achievable. And one of the things that we're finding is that was not necessarily the case earlier. That's why I was also mentioning that, now that we're seeing improvements in sector planning, hopefully we will also see improvements in sector plan implementation. But that was one of sort of the weaker linkages in the earlier processes. So the evaluations you will see will be of 2 types. One will be what we call summative evaluations that are looking at sort of the cycle of planning GPE grant financing that has ended recently. So a lot of that will predate some of the newer processes that GPE has in sector planning, in variable tranche where we're providing incentives, or GPE financing is providing incentives to focus on learning and to focus on equity. So those are newer things. So we also have a set of 8 studies that we have initiated that are what we call prospective evaluations that are starting with these processes and will trace how they work in the future. So I think it's a little early to talk about sort of at a macro level what we're learning, but these case studies are coming online. We will have more by the end of this year. And at the end of this calendar year, we will have a synthesis report. So that synthesis report will really tell us about, what worked in the past and what looks more promising in the future.
Great, thank you, Nidhi. Another question coming online from the Pakistan Coalition for Education. How is GPE planning to operationalize accountability role of CSOs in context of shrinking CSO spaces? Is there a mechanism by which the process can be made more inclusive other than the leg?
Mm-hmm. So these are, as I was mentioning earlier, these are essentially processes that are country level. And GPE partnership role is in really encouraging and incentivizing and sort of pushing these processes. It's not a mechanism that we as a partnership can mandate in a way. And so although we do require that the plans, the sector plans are looked at by the local education group, we do have certain processes in place that require a mutual accountability mechanism to be functioning. Now, the question is, how well do they function? And what is the context of the country in which CSOs are functioning, and how much leeway do they have? So these are like essentially country-level processes. What we are trying to do now is to develop guidance on these mechanisms so that there is a common understanding of how local actors, how actors that have an interest, a joint interest in the goals of the education system can be engaged. So we hope to be working out that guidance and mainstreaming that across all of the GPE countries. So, I mean, it's GPE, as you know, it's a partnership, and it tries to work in a collaborative way. And so we have certain mechanisms that drive those processes, but not necessarily the quality of those processes. And to enhance the quality, we need to provide knowledge and information and so forth so that they can work more effectively. Rudraksh, I don't know if you have something to add.
Yes, so a key aspect of CSOs being able to engage and having voice in a country is their technical and financial capacity to do so. And in the past, through our investment in the Civil Society Education Fund, and now through the upcoming Advocacy and Social Accountability Initiative, what we're trying to do is to support CSOs to make sure that they have the requisite capacity that allows them to have a voice in country processes. So, as you mentioned, there is participation in the local education groups. What we want to ensure is that the quality and the intensity of that participation is such that CSOs really are meaningfully represented on the legs. And sort of through this kind of capacity building and other forms of support, what we hope is that CSO engagement is not only broadened but also deepened and more meaningful.
Thank you. We have another question coming through from our colleagues in Dakar and CEFA. They're asking whether we have targets, milestones, and indicators relating to tertiary level, especially on youth skills and employability. And if yes, how is their performance?
A very simple answer to that: no, we don't have any targets vis-a-vis tertiary education. I should mention that, I mean, GPE is around basic education. At the same time, sector plans are supposed to be comprehensive. And so they are to span across the education sector. So at the country level, a good plan should include, how they're going to be working at the tertiary level and what sorts of targets and indicators they're going to be using for that. But we don't track that as part of our corporate results framework.
Thank you both. And I think we just have time for just a couple more questions before we wrap up. The performance on grant alignment has been poor for 2 consecutive years. Can we expect to see any improvement in this indicator next year? And what are the actions that GPE Secretariat Management is proposing to improve grant alignment?
Mm-hmm. So another good question. And this indicator is something that will move slowly. And there are 2 reasons for it. One is that, we measure alignment on existing grants. And so every year there are few grants that close and few grants that enter into the pool. So the measurement of this is essentially the same, majority of them is the same set of grants that goes to the next year. And so if there are new grants that are aligned, that indicator will change. If they are not aligned, then that indicator or stays the same depending on what happens to the changes in the pool of grants. So it's going to change slowly. At the same time, what we're trying to do is to understand issues around non-alignment. Why is it in certain countries and with certain grant agents we don't have alignment? Are there good reasons for it? Are there institutional reasons that some grant agents have where in certain countries they will not align because, for example, the government procurement system does not meet their standards or the audit system doesn't meet their standards. So these are things that will move slowly, but it's something that we are continuing to work on, including guidance on how to push for alignment and how to look at the various dimensions of alignment.
Great. Just checking whether we have anything coming through email. If not, then maybe we can just wrap up with this final question. What area of GPE results are most difficult to monitor? How can the partnership work together to improve this area?
Mm-hmm. Well, the most difficult area to monitor is learning outcomes. We've already noted that we don't have enough data, and this is something that the partnership is really trying to work on to help countries strengthen their assessment systems so that we can actually see whether children are learning, whether they are not learning, what areas they're learning in, what areas not. So that's one of the most difficult areas. And that's something that GPE is continuing to work on through the grants, through knowledge exchange, and so forth.
Great. Thank you, both of you. And I would invite you, Nidhi, if you would just to conclude, if you have a few words you'd like to wrap up.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for attending this webinar, and I'd like to thank Michelle and Mary and our team here for organizing it, and thank you all for participating. I hope it has been useful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email them to us, or any other observations, please feel free to email them to us, and we'd be happy to have a follow-up and to answer any other questions you might have. We had an interesting discussion around data, around financing, around CSO participation, all of which are really key elements of GPE. So thank you for your questions. As follow-up, we will be summarizing the main points from this session, and we will be sharing the materials from this webinar, the PowerPoint presentations in English and French, a summary note of the discussion, as well as the video recordings in English and French from this. So again, we thank you for your time, and if you have any other follow-up questions, please email them to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.